The glass shattered against the wall just inches from her head, and Maya's hands trembled as cold soda dripped down her uniform. But she didn't move because she had learned long ago that bullies feed on fear, and today was the day everything would change. The lunch crowd at Miller's diner had gone silent, and every eye in the restaurant was watching to see if the young black waitress would finally break under the pressure of the three men who had made her life miserable for weeks. But what none of them knew was that beneath her quiet smile and patient service lived a warrior who had spent 15 years mastering an ancient art, and in exactly 5 minutes, these bullies would learn the hardest lesson of their lives. Maya Richardson had been working at Miller's Diner in downtown Atlanta for 8 months, and she loved her job because the regular customers were kind and the pay helped her save money for the youth community center she dreamed of opening one day. She was 28 years old, with warm brown eyes and a smile that could light up the darkest room, and everyone who knew her said she had a heart of pure gold. What they didn't know was that Maya was also a 4th-degree black belt in Taekwondo and had won 3 national championships before quietly retiring to focus on teaching underprivileged kids self-defense for free every weekend. She never talked about her skills because her grandmother had taught her that real strength doesn't need to announce itself, and that the most powerful people are often the quietest ones in the room. The trouble started 2 months ago when 3 men began coming to the diner every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. Their leader was a large man named Derek who wore expensive suits and treated everyone around him like servants beneath his notice. His 2 friends Brad and Kyle always laughed at his jokes and joined in whenever he decided to make someone's day miserable. From their first visit, Derek had targeted Maya with cruel comments about her appearance, her intelligence, and her race, and his friends had followed his lead like puppets on strings. Maya had handled it with grace and professionalism because she needed this job, and because she believed that responding to hate with hate only creates more darkness in the world. But today was different because today Derek had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Maya had been serving a table of elderly customers when Derek stuck his foot out and tripped her, sending a tray of food crashing to the floor. The entire restaurant had gasped as Maya caught herself just before hitting the ground, and when she stood up with food stains covering her uniform, Derek and his friends had erupted in cruel laughter. The elderly woman Maya had been serving started to cry, and her husband stood up with shaking fists, but Maya gently touched his arm and smiled, saying it was okay, even though her heart was pounding with anger she had been suppressing for weeks. That's when Derek made his final mistake. He stood up and walked toward Maya with a smirk on his face and said loud enough for everyone to hear that people like her should be grateful to even have jobs serving people like him, and that maybe if she got on her knees and apologized properly, he might leave her a nice tip. His words hung in the air like poison, and Maya felt something inside her shift, like a door opening that had been locked for too long. She looked at Derek with calm eyes and asked him politely to return to his seat, and when he laughed and reached out to grab her arm, everything changed. Maya's hand moved so fast that most people didn't see it happen. She redirected Derek's grab with a simple wrist technique that left him stumbling forward off balance and confused. Brad jumped up from the table and rushed toward Maya, but she sidestepped smoothly and used his own momentum to send him sliding across the floor into an empty booth. Kyle stood frozen, not understanding how his 2 friends had been handled so easily by a woman they had spent weeks mocking and disrespecting. Derek's face turned red with rage and embarrassment, and he charged at Maya like an angry bull, not caring that everyone in the restaurant was watching his humiliation unfold. What happened next would be talked about in the neighborhood for years to come. Maya moved like water flowing around rocks as Derek's wild punches hit nothing but air. She didn't strike him or hurt him because that wasn't who she was, but she controlled his every movement with precision and grace that came from years of dedicated training. When Derek tried to grab her, she locked his arm and guided him gently but firmly to the ground, where he lay breathing hard and unable to move without pain shooting through his shoulder. Brad got up for another attempt, and Maya swept his legs out from under him so smoothly that he seemed to simply fall down on his own. Kyle, who had been recording the whole thing on his phone, suddenly stopped and put the device away, realizing that he was capturing evidence of his friend's complete defeat at the hands of someone they had cruelly underestimated. The restaurant manager, Mr. Patterson, rushed out from the kitchen and stopped dead in his tracks when he saw the scene before him. Derek was on the floor with Maya's knee gently pressed against his back, holding him in place without any visible effort. Brad was groaning in a booth, holding his hip where he had landed awkwardly, and Kyle stood with his hands up in surrender. Mr. Patterson had seen everything from the kitchen camera, and his face was a mixture of shock and something that looked like pride. He had wanted to fire the 3 bullies weeks ago, but they were friends with the diner's owner, and he had been told to tolerate them no matter how badly they behaved. Maya looked up at her manager with tears in her eyes and said she was sorry for the disturbance, and that she would understand if she needed to lose her job over this. Mr. Patterson shook his head firmly and said that she had nothing to apologize for, and that he should have protected her better from the beginning. He pulled out his phone and called the police while the entire restaurant burst into applause that started with the elderly couple Maya had been serving and spread through every customer who had witnessed her grace under pressure. Several people had recorded the incident on their phones, and within hours the videos would go viral, showing the world what real strength and dignity looked like in the face of hatred and cruelty. When the police arrived, Derek tried to claim that Maya had attacked them without provocation, but 15 witnesses immediately spoke up to tell the truth about months of harassment and the assault that Derek had initiated. The officers listened to everyone's statements and reviewed the multiple video recordings, and within minutes, Derek, Brad, and Kyle were being let out of the diner in handcuffs while customers cheered, and Maya stood quietly in the corner trying to process everything that had just happened. One of the officers approached her and asked about her training, and when she mentioned her black belt and competition history, his eyes widened with recognition because he had actually seen her compete years ago and remembered her as one of the most talented martial artists he had ever watched. The officer told Maya that she had shown remarkable restraint and that most people with her skills would have seriously injured the men who attacked her, but she had chosen to simply control the situation without causing unnecessary harm. Maya explained that her master had taught her that martial arts was not about hurting people, but about protecting yourself and others while maintaining your humanity, and that violence should always be the last resort of someone who has no other choice. The officer nodded with deep respect and told her that she was exactly the kind of person who should be teaching others, and that the world needed more people like her. After the police left, Mr. Patterson insisted that Maya take the rest of the day off with full pay, and he promised her that things were going to change at the diner starting immediately. He called the owner and explained everything that had happened, and surprisingly, the owner was horrified to learn how his friends had been behaving and immediately banned them permanently from the restaurant. He apologized to Maya personally and offered her a raise and a promotion to shift supervisor because he recognized that someone with her character and composure was exactly the kind of person he wanted leading his team. Maya was overwhelmed by the support and kindness flowing toward her from every direction, and she realized that standing up for herself had not only changed her own life but had inspired everyone around her to be braver and more vocal against injustice. The story could have ended there, but the universe had bigger plans for Maya Richardson. The videos of the incident had been shared millions of times across social media, and news outlets were calling the diner asking for interviews. Maya initially wanted to decline all of them because she had never sought attention or fame, but her grandmother convinced her that her story could inspire other people who were facing bullying and discrimination to stand up for themselves with courage and dignity. So Maya agreed to do one interview with a local news station. And she spoke from her heart about the importance of self-defense, not just for physical protection, but for building confidence and self-respect in people who had been made to feel small by the world. The interview touched millions of hearts, and Maya's phone started ringing with opportunities she had never imagined. A national martial arts organization offered to sponsor her if she wanted to return to competition, but Maya politely declined because her competing days were behind her and she had a different dream calling her forward. What she really wanted was to open that community center she had been saving for so she could teach young people, especially girls and minorities, the skills they needed to protect themselves and walk through life with confidence. She had seen too many young people in her neighborhood growing up without hope or direction, and she believed that martial arts could teach them discipline, focus, and self-worth that would change the trajectory of their entire lives. Then something magical happened that Maya would later describe as proof that good things come to people who stay true to their values. A successful businessman named Marcus Chun, who had seen her interview, reached out to her through the diner because he had grown up poor in a rough neighborhood, and martial arts had saved his life by giving him purpose and direction when he was headed down a dangerous path. Marcus was now a millionaire who ran a chain of fitness centers, and he wanted to help Maya achieve her dream because he believed her story and her heart were exactly what the world needed right now. He offered to fully fund her community center with no strings attached and to provide ongoing support for operations and scholarships for kids who couldn't afford the small fees Maya planned to charge. Maya couldn't believe what was happening because she had spent years saving every penny, hoping to one day have enough to rent a small space and buy some basic equipment, but Marcus was offering her a fully equipped facility in the heart of the neighborhood where she had grown up. She cried tears of joy and gratitude and told Marcus that she would spend the rest of her life making sure his investment changed as many lives as possible. Marcus smiled and said that he wasn't making an investment, he was supporting a movement, and that he believed Maya was going to touch thousands of lives in ways neither of them could yet imagine. 6 months later, the Maya Richardson Youth Center opened its doors to a neighborhood that desperately needed hope and opportunity. The facility had 2 training floors, a classroom for tutoring and mentorship, programs, a small gym, and a community room where parents could wait and attend workshops on everything from financial literacy to conflict resolution. Maya hired 3 other instructors who shared her values, and together they created a program that combined martial arts training with academic support, life skills education, and emotional counseling. The center operated on a pay-what-you-can model so that no child would ever be turned away because of money, and local businesses lined up to sponsor scholarships and donate equipment. The impact was immediate and profound. Kids who had been struggling in school started showing up early to classes and staying late to practice. Young people who had been quiet and withdrawn began speaking up and setting goals for their futures. Parents reported that their children were more respectful, more focused, and more confident in every area of their lives. The center became a safe haven where kids from different backgrounds came together and learned that strength comes in many forms and that real power is about lifting others up, not putting them down. Maya taught every class with the same grace and patience. She had shown that day at the diner, and her students loved her not just as an instructor but as a mentor and role model who proved that kindness and strength could live together in the same person. Word spread quickly, and soon Maya was being invited to speak at schools, conferences, and community events all over the country. She always said yes when her schedule allowed because she remembered what it felt like to be young and uncertain, and she wanted every young person to know that they had the power to write their own story, regardless of what others said or did to try to stop them. She spoke about her experience at the diner not as a story of revenge or violence, but as an example of how years of quiet preparation and self-discipline had given her the tools to handle a crisis with grace and effectiveness. She taught audiences that self-defense was about so much more than fighting it, was about knowing your worth, setting boundaries, and having the courage to stand up when someone tries to make you less than you are. Derek, Brad, and Kyle faced legal consequences for their actions, including assault charges and mandatory anger management classes. Derek lost his job when his company saw the viral videos and realized that having someone with his values representing their brand was a liability they couldn't afford. Brad and Kyle both issued public apologies that seemed more motivated by their lawyers than genuine remorse, but Maya chose to forgive them anyway because she believed that holding on to anger would only poison her own spirit. She never heard from them again, and that was fine with her because she was too busy building something beautiful to waste energy on people who refused to grow. The elderly couple that Maya had been serving that fateful day became regular volunteers at the youth center. The husband, whose name was Robert, had been a boxing champion in his youth, and he started teaching a boxing basics class for the older kids. His wife, Susan, organized a reading program and a grandparents' mentorship initiative that paired seniors from the community with young people who needed positive role models. They told everyone who would listen that Maya had restored their faith in the younger generation, and that watching her handle that situation with such dignity and strength had inspired them to get more involved in making their community better. Mr. Patterson, the diner manager, became one of Maya's biggest supporters, and he started a program at Miller's Diner where they hired young people from the youth center to work part-time and learn job skills in a supportive environment. He told Maya that she had taught him an important lesson about standing up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable, and that he would never again stay silent when he saw injustice happening in front of him. The diner became known as a community hub where people from all backgrounds came together over good food and shared values, and Mr. Patterson proudly displayed photos of Maya and the youth center on the wall near the entrance. 3 years after that transformative day, Maya stood in front of 500 people at the youth center's annual fundraiser and reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She looked out at the crowd and saw former students who were now in college studying to become teachers, lawyers, doctors, and yes, even martial arts instructors, who wanted to give back the way Maya had given to them. She saw parents whose lives had been changed because their children had found purpose and direction. She saw community leaders who had started their own initiatives inspired by the model Maya had created. And she saw her grandmother sitting in the front row with tears of pride streaming down her beautiful face. Maya spoke about how a moment of crisis had become a catalyst for transformation, not just in her own life but in the lives of countless others. She explained that the real victory that day at the diner wasn't in defending herself physically, it was in choosing to respond to hatred with dignity and in using the attention that followed to build something meaningful instead of seeking revenge or dwelling on bitterness. She told the audience that everyone has the power to turn their pain into purpose and their struggles into strength, but it requires making a conscious choice every single day to be better than the worst things that have happened to you. She shared that the youth center had now served over 2,000 young people, and that 97% of their high school seniors had graduated and gone on to college vocational training or meaningful employment. She announced that they were opening a second location in another underserved neighborhood, and that Marcus Chun had once again stepped up to make it possible. The crowd erupted in applause, and Maya felt overwhelmed with gratitude for how one moment of standing up for herself had rippled outward in ways she never could have imagined. As the evening wound down, a young girl named Jasmine approached Maya shyly. Jasmine was 12 years old and had been coming to the center for 6 months. After being severely bullied at school for her weight and her stutter, Maya recognized the look in Jasmine's eyes because she had seen it in the mirror many times throughout her own life. Jasmine took a deep breath and said that she wanted to tell Maya something important. She explained that before coming to the center, she had been thinking about hurting herself because she felt worthless and alone. But learning martial arts and being part of the youth center community had saved her life by teaching her that she was strong and valuable exactly as she was. Maya knelt down and hugged Jasmine while tears flowed freely down both their faces. She told Jasmine that she was proud of her courage in sharing something so difficult and that she was so grateful Jasmine had chosen to keep fighting and to keep believing in herself. She promised Jasmine that the hard times wouldn't last forever and that one day she would use her own story to help someone else who was struggling, just like people had helped both of them along the way. Jasmine nodded and smiled, and Maya saw a light in her eyes that hadn't been there when they first met. That conversation reminded Maya why she did this work and why that difficult day at the diner had been a blessing in disguise. If Derek and his friends hadn't pushed her to her breaking point, she might never have stood up for herself, and the videos might never have gone viral, and Marcus might never have reached out, and thousands of young people might never have found the hope and skills they needed to transform their lives. Sometimes the worst moments crack us open so that more light can shine through, and sometimes the people who try to break us end up being the catalyst for us becoming stronger than we ever thought possible. Maya continued to work at Miller's Diner 2 days a week because she never wanted to forget where she came from or lose touch with the everyday people who had supported her from the beginning. She still served tables with the same warm smile and patient kindness, and customers still left generous tips, not because they felt sorry for her, but because they respected her and wanted to support the amazing work she was doing in the community. She had been offered countless opportunities to move into more prestigious positions, but she always said no because she loved her life exactly as it was, serving people, teaching kids, and building a legacy that would outlast her. On quiet nights when the diner was slow, Maya would sometimes think back to that moment when Derek's hand reached toward her, and she made the split-second decision to defend herself instead of accepting more abuse. She wondered what would have happened if she had simply walked away or let him continue to humiliate her, and she realized that standing up that day had been about so much more than just that one incident. It had been about finally deciding that she deserved respect and dignity, and that her silence was no longer helping anyone, least of all herself. It had been about recognizing that sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is set a firm boundary that protects not only yourself but also sends a message to everyone watching that bullying and hatred will not be tolerated. The lesson Maya wanted everyone to take from her story was simple but powerful. You don't have to be a black belt to stand up for yourself, and you don't need to use physical force to show strength. Real courage is about knowing your worth, refusing to accept less than you deserve, and responding to hate with dignity instead of matching their darkness. It's about understanding that the bullies in life are usually people who are deeply unhappy with themselves, and that their cruelty says everything about them and nothing about you. And most importantly, it's about taking the pain and struggle you've experienced and transforming it into something beautiful that helps others, so that your suffering becomes the seed of someone else's healing. Maya's story spread far beyond Atlanta and became a symbol of grace under pressure and the power of turning adversity into opportunity. She received letters from people all over the world thanking her for inspiring them to stand up to their own bullies, whether those bullies were other people or the negative voices in their own heads. She heard from parents who started enrolling their kids in martial arts, and from adults who went back to school or started new careers because Maya's example reminded them that it's never too late to fight for the life you deserve. She became living proof that one person standing up with courage and dignity can create ripples that touch thousands of lives in ways that extend far beyond what the eye can see. Years later, when Maya was invited to speak at a national conference on bullying prevention, she told the audience something that had taken her a long time to understand. She said that she was grateful for Derek and Brad and Kyle not because what they did was okay, but because their cruelty had forced her to find a strength she didn't know she needed. She explained that sometimes our enemies are our greatest teachers because they show us exactly who we don't want to be, and they give us opportunities to prove to ourselves what we're really made of. She said that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing bad behavior, it means releasing the poison so it doesn't continue to hurt you and choosing to focus your energy on building something good instead of dwelling on something bad. The conference audience gave her a standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes, and afterward hundreds of people lined up to thank her and share their own stories of overcoming bullying and discrimination. Maya listened to each person with her full attention and offered encouragement and hugs, and reminded them that their stories mattered and their voices deserved to be heard. She left that conference exhausted but filled with hope because she saw clearly that the world was full of good people who were hungry for examples of how to be strong and kind at the same time. Today, Maya Richardson is 35 years old, and the youth center that started as a dream has grown into a movement with locations in 6 cities and counting. She has trained over 50 instructors who share her philosophy and her heart, and together they have impacted the lives of more than 10,000 young people. She has written a book about her journey that became a bestseller and donated all the proceeds to fund scholarships for kids who want to learn martial arts but can't afford it. She has been featured in national magazines and news programs and has received countless awards and honors, but the recognition she treasures most is the thank you notes she receives from students and parents whose lives have been changed by the work she does. Maya still teaches classes 3 times a week because being on the mat with her students grounds her and reminds her why she started this journey in the first place. She watches young people discover their strength and confidence, and she sees them transform from shy, uncertain kids into bold, compassionate leaders, and she knows that this is her purpose and her calling. She tells her students the same thing her grandmother told her many years ago, that real strength doesn't need to announce itself, and that the most powerful people are often the quietest ones in the room until the moment comes when they need to stand up, and then everyone sees what they've been building all along. The diner where it all started still stands in downtown Atlanta, and Miller's Diner has become something of a landmark where tourists and locals alike come to visit, the place where Maya's story unfolded. Mr. Patterson eventually retired, and Maya was offered the chance to buy the diner, which she did because it felt like honoring the place that had changed her life. She kept the name and the menu and the spirit of community that had always made it special, and she made it a training ground for young people from the youth center who wanted to learn restaurant skills and business management. The walls are now covered with photos of youth center graduates and newspaper clippings about the good work happening in the community, and every person who walks through the door can feel that this is a place where something important happened and where magic continues to unfold every single day. On the anniversary of that fateful day, Maya always takes time to reflect and give thanks. She thinks about how close she came to just accepting the abuse and staying silent, and how one moment of courage changed the entire trajectory of her life and the lives of thousands of others. She thinks about the elderly couple who became family, and Marcus Chun, who believed in her dream, and Mr. Patterson, who stood up for her when it mattered. She thinks about every student who walked through the youth center doors carrying pain and walked out carrying hope. And she thanks God or the universe or whatever force guides you through this life for giving her the strength to stand up when it would have been easier to stay down. Maya's message to anyone who is facing their own bullies, whether at work or school or anywhere else, is this: You are stronger than you know, and you deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. Don't let anyone make you feel small or worthless because their words and actions reflect their own brokenness, not your value. Build yourself up quietly and consistently through education, training self-care, and surrounding yourself with good people who see your worth. And when the moment comes when you need to stand up, do it with courage and grace, knowing that you're not just fighting for yourself. You're showing everyone around you what strength and dignity look like in action. Your story isn't over, and the best chapters might be the ones you write after you finally decide you've had enough and you're ready to fight for the life you deserve.